Some events during second year of migration. 1. Regular calls for the Parieh began to be observed. 2. Allah Almighty commanded the Muslims to change their direction of prayer from Jerusalem to the Kaaba in Makkah. 3. Fasting in the month of Ramadan was made compulsory. 4. Ghazwa-e-Badr fought between the Muslims in the command of Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, and idolaters of Makkah. On the 19th Ramadan Hijri of the Islamic calendar, at the place of Badr, a few miles away from Medina. The number of Muslims in this war were 313, and the numbers of enemy were 950, some places mentioned almost 1,000. The Muslims won the war, and 70 idolaters killed and 70 captured, whereas only 14 Muslims embraced Shahadat. Some events during third year of migration. 1. Zakat, the poor due, was made compulsory. For example, every rich Muslim was required to give 1/40 of his wealth every year for distribution among the poor. 2. Quraysh. Makkah consisted on 3,000 army in the command of Abu Sufyan entered in the area of Medina, but on the other side, the number of Muslim were less, only 750. The Battle of Ghazwa-e-Uhud fought on the mountain of Uhud. Muslims faced defeated in this Ghazwa, but the Quraysh-e-Makkah faced a huge loss, and they went back instead to enter in Medina. Event of fourth year of migration. Wine was strictly forbidden. Some events during fifth year of migration. 1. Women were required to wear the hijab, veil. 2. During 5th Hijri of the Islamic calendar, Quraysh in Makkah attacked on the Medina with 10,000 army on the other side. The army of Muslim were only 3,000. On the advice of Hazrat Suleiman, Farsi Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, decided to dig the defending trench around the Medina. When the Quraysh-e-Makkah see that they would not cross the trench, so they stayed there. With the help of Allah, storms and rains came, and the feet of the Quraysh swept away and they run back. 3. Battle of Khaybar. Initially, the Muslim army of 1,500 soldiers, under the leadership of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, reached the place called Raji, which was between the Khaybar and Banu Guftan. The people of Banu Guftan got so scared of the Muslim army that soon the Muslims will attack them, and thus due to fear, they backed off and decided not to support Jews anymore in their war against Muslims. The Battle of Khaybar was not a single decisive engagement, but rather a series of skirmishes and sieges at various fortresses within the oasis. The Muslims began their siege, facing a determined and well-organized defense by the Jewish inhabitants. Muslims had to face many struggles in captivating the forts of Khaybar, which was essential to defeat the Jew of Khaybar. Some events during sixth year of migration. 1. The Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, proceeding towards Makkah for Umrah, but when he reached a point where he was 14 miles away from Makkah, the Quraysh would not allow him to go further. Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, stopped there. An agreement was made between the Quraysh and the Muslims on the following points. A. Peace be maintained for 10 years, and travel and transactions should be freely operated. Every tribe is to be allowed to join hands with the Muslims or the Quraysh. B. The Muslims were allowed to offer their prayers at the Kaaba the following year. C. If a person from the Quraysh accepted Islam and reached the Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, he or she would be sent back to the Quraysh, but if a Muslim gives up Islam and goes to the Quraysh, he would not be sent back. The Muslims did not like this point, but the Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, accepted this condition as well. D. The Quraysh thought that no person would accept Islam in view of this condition. When the agreement was being drafted, Abdu Jandal, son of Suhail, who came to negotiate the agreement for the Makkans, was already a Muslim, but was kept in confinement by the tribe. However, as soon as he got the opportunity, he fled while his feet were still chained. Suhail demanded the Muslims to hand over his son according to the terms of the agreement. The Muslims refused to act upon the terms of the agreement as it had not been signed by them at that time. Suhail became angry and told the Muslims that they would not enter into an agreement. The Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, handed Abu Jandal over to them. Abu Jandal was returned to confinement. While he was held captive in Makkah, he taught people the basic principles of Islam. As a result of the teachings, 100 people Islam within a year in Makkah itself. Everyone who has some sense could understand from this fact how the sincerity of the Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, and the goodness of the religion of Islam were captivating hearts, despite the many difficulties that people had to face when accepting Islam. They suffered separation from near and dear ones, distances from their native land. 2. Chosroes, Emperor of Persia. He insulted the messenger of Holy Prophet, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, and tore his letter to pieces. 3. Negus, Emperor of Abyssinia. He embraced Islam. 4. Cyrus, ruler of Egypt. He reacted positively, but did not accept Islam. 5. The rulers of Bahrain and Oman. Both of them embraced Islam. Some events during 8th year of migration. 1. Battle of Mu'tah was fought with 3,000 Muslims army against Byzantine Empire with 200,000 army. On the instruction of Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, Muslims were not to attack those engaged in prayers. No woman, child, or old man was to be injured or killed by Muslims, and no green trees were to be cut or destroyed, and Muslims won. 2. Conquest of Makkah. Holy Prophet, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, left Medina on 10th of Ramzan with an army which by the time he reached Makkah numbered 10,000. Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, received the revelation that, and say, truth has arrived and falsehood perished, for falsehood bound to perish. He said to Quraysh that, there shall be no reproach against you this day. Go, you are free. These were the people who forced Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, out of Makkah, and these same people were standing in front of him as helplessness. If Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, wanted to take revenge, you could have taken it, but Prophet Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, forgave them.